Have you ever stopped to wonder what molecules, like the proteins and DNA inside you, are actually doing all day? I mean, they're not just these static diagrams you see in a textbook. Nope. They are constantly wiggling, folding, and interacting in a secret, invisible dance. So today, we're going to go behind the scenes at a virtual movie studio to see exactly how scientists create films of these incredible molecular lives.
But here's the real problem, right? Molecules are just unbelievably small, and their movements are blindingly fast. You can't just, point a camera at them and hit record. So how in the world can we watch this intricate dance that literally drives all of biology? How do we see something like a new drug molecule find its target, or a protein fold itself into just the right shape? Well, the answer is pretty wild. We don't film the real molecule. Instead, we build a perfect digital double, a kind of virtual actor, and then we direct it inside a supercomputer. This whole amazing technique is called molecular dynamic simulation. At its core, the whole idea is actually pretty simple. Molecular dynamics, or MD for short, is basically a physics engine, but for molecules. It all comes down to Newton's classic law of motion, force equals mass times acceleration. It uses that to calculate how every single atom moves, but over these incredibly tiny time steps. And by stringing millions or even billions of these steps together, we create a full-blown movie of that molecule in action. So how do we pull this off without getting bogged down in super complex quantum mechanics? Well, we simplify things a lot. We treat each atom like a simple little sphere. In the chemical bonds that connect them, we just model those as tiny, flexible springs. It's a really elegant and surprisingly powerful way to build our digital actor. Okay, so we've got our actor, but, an actor is no good without a script telling them how to behave. For our digital molecule, that script is something called a force field, and it's basically a set of mathematical rules that dictates every single move our actor is allowed to make. And seriously, that is not an exaggeration. The force field really is the soul of the simulation. It has all the information about how the atoms are supposed to interact with each other and with their environment. Getting the script exactly right is absolutely crucial if we want to produce a realistic movie. You can basically think of this script as having two main parts. First, you've got the bonded interactions. These are kind of like the actor's internal rules, how its own arms and legs can bend and stretch. Then you've got the non-bonded interactions, which are more like the actor's social rules, how it interacts with other actors or props on the stage. And these internal rules get incredibly specific. The force field defines precisely how much energy it costs to stretch or compress those little spring bonds, how much the angles between those bonds can bend, and even how different parts of the molecule can twist around each other. There are even special rules just to make sure certain parts, like aromatic rings, stay perfectly flat like they're supposed to. And then you've got the social rules, which are every bit as important. These are what govern how our molecule interacts with everything it isn't directly wired to. This covers stuff like electrostatic forces, that classic push and pull between positive and negative charges, and also the much weaker, but still critical, van der Waals forces that cause little temporary attractions between neutral atoms. All right, so we have our actor and we have our script. What's next? Well, every actor needs a stage. We can't just simulate our molecule in a total vacuum. That wouldn't be realistic. We have to place it in a proper virtual environment. Setting the stage is a three-step process. First, of course, we've got to prepare our star molecule, making sure its 3D structure is spot on. Second, because most of this stuff happens in water inside our bodies, we surround our molecule with thousands of digital water molecules. And third, we have to define the edges of our stage so our actor doesn't just wander off set. So to solve that wandering off problem, scientists use this really clever trick called periodic boundary conditions. Just imagine the simulation box is like the screen in an old school video game, like Pac-Man. When our molecule drifts out one side, poof, an identical copy of it instantly enters from the opposite side. This little trick creates the illusion of an infinitely large system, which means our molecule always feels like it's right in the middle of a crowd. Actor? Check. Script? Check. Stage? Check. We are finally ready to do what we came here for. It's time to roll the virtual camera and start this simulation. So here's the magic. At every single step, the computer calculates all the forces acting on every single atom, all based on that force field script. Then it uses Newton's laws to figure out exactly where each atom will move in the next tiny sliver of time. It saves that new position as one frame of our movie, and then it does the whole thing again. Calculate forces, move atoms, save frame. Over and over, millions and billions of times. And when I say a tiny sliver of time, I mean unbelievably tiny. The time step between each frame is usually around 1 femtosecond. That's a quadrillionth of a second. It's a number so small, it's hard to even think about. But we need that insane level of detail to accurately capture the fastest atomic movements, like the vibrations of the chemical bonds themselves. And just like on a real film set, we have to control the filming conditions. We set the overall physical rules, and we use these virtual thermostats and barostats to make sure the temperature and pressure in our simulation box perfectly mimic real biological conditions. Then, a special algorithm called an integrator does all the heavy lifting, calculating the motion frame by painstaking frame. So, we've gone to all this incredible trouble. We built an actor, we wrote a script, we set the stage, and we've been filming a movie 1 femtosecond at a time. You might be asking, why? What's the point of watching these incredibly detailed molecular movies? The payoff is huge. These movies give us insights we could never get any other way. We can literally watch a protein spontaneously fold itself into its correct active shape. We can see the exact mechanism of how a tiny genetic mutation might lead to a disease. And maybe most importantly, we can test new drugs by watching exactly how they physically bind to and interact with their target molecules. It's like having a computational microscope that lets us see the invisible world that drives our own biology. And that really brings us to the big final thought here. This technology gives us the power to be the directors of our own molecular films. We can set up any scene we want with any molecular actors under any conditions we can imagine. So as our computers get even more powerful and our scripts, our force fields get more and more accurate, you just have to wonder, what amazing blockbuster discoveries will this virtual movie studio allow us to produce next?